Welcome to the Action Network podcast. I am your host, Evan Abrams, and I am joined, as always, by the one, the only, the great one, Brandon Anderson, for some best bets here for NFL Conference Championship Week. Yeah, my goal, Brandon, is to always try to change up the intro a little bit. I got to get you off your horse a little bit. First of all, Brandon, what's up, man? How are you? Talk to me.
Man, the great one. It's me and Wayne Gretzky. I'm going to be invited
Yep.
to the inauguration next at this rate. We got penultimate weekend of football right off the top.
There you go,
Two
Matt
games,
Mitchell.
one game left after that. Shouts to Matt Mitchell on the penultimate. We got coaching hires. I'm already starting to think about football for next year. We got Super Bowl MVP odds up. We got Super Bowl odds up for next season, 2026, which sounds like some made up year in the future, but it's somehow just next Super Bowl. So yeah, we got fun games Sunday. Chiefs Bills, for my money, is the game that I want in football. Like, that's the one as a bettor, as a prop guy. Just looking back in the last few seasons, to me, like growing up in the 90s, Niners Cowboys was the epitome of football. If you got Niners Cowboys, which we got it like every year, often again in the playoffs, that was the one. It feels like Chiefs Bills is that game right now. So I'm just excited for this.
I mean, the fact that we knew we were going to get Ravens Bills into most likely, well, after the Chiefs opened up the weekend with the win, we were going to get the Chiefs in the next round. It really felt like the semifinal final that everyone had kind of dreamed of. And then we're going to have to wait 2 weeks to watch them play one of these NFC teams, which at that point, I don't even know if it's going to feel like the Super Bowl, but it's going to feel like some game. So I think we're going to talk about that. But I do have some sort of gut feeling if Buffalo does get through Kansas City. Like, I can't even imagine. It's going to be weird saying this, but getting up 2 weeks later after beating both Baltimore and Kansas City, especially if it's like Washington. But okay, we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Before we get into the games themselves, which we've got best bets, we've got props, all sorts of fun stuff. We're going to go through a few of these coaching hires, just a few notes from Brandon and I on just how we think of the guy and the fit, and we'll go quickly through these and even some playoff leader bets and a few different topics before we get into the game. So we'll start with Aaron Glenn and the Jets. Brandon, I'll let you go first. I have like a nugget or two, but thoughts here?
Yeah, I think it's Aaron Glenn is fine. I don't know that I have the strongest of opinion on Aaron Glenn, former Jets player. I don't necessarily always love that because I wonder, did you really like look at all the options? Seemed like they really locked in on him. They interviewed like 30, 40 dudes for head coach. Like every new tweet was another guy they're interviewing. He's the only one they gave a second interview to. That doesn't sound like the best process to me. I thought he was good defensive coordinator. I don't necessarily know that he was great. I don't know that I would put him among like the top 5 to 7 guys. Like Mike McDonald this year going to Seattle, I was like, oh, okay, well, that's going to be a sick defense. I have to immediately upgrade them and everything about them. Can they get the offensive coordinator right? So that's two things. Number one, I don't think Aaron Glenn is in that Mike McDonald group. Now, I may be wrong. Defense is tough to judge. We saw them fade pretty hard, but there's a lot of injuries. I was never really convinced the Lions were this like elite top 3 defense, even with all the guys earlier in the year. Number two, I want to hire an offensive minded coach. Aaron Glenn's not that. So it now comes down to, do you get the right offensive coordinator on this team and do you get the quarterback? And that's a problem because getting both of those guys is easier said than done. If you get the really good offensive coordinator, they just leave for another coaching position next year anyway. So I think Aaron Glenn seems very liked by everybody, seems like a good sort of fire up the defense, get everyone playing hard. That's like what the Jets have been doing for all these years, right? Like we just fired the version of that. We know what that was. It was pretty solid, but they fired him for a reason. So I don't know. I'm not upset about it, but it feels like they kind of already did this version and we saw the maxed out version of it. And I don't know that I just think I'd rather hire a more offensive minded guy at this point for the most part.
Yeah, you basically took most of my notes here, which was I wanted an offensive-minded guy versus a defensive-minded guy. I mean, granted, you got rid of Salah and the defense literally fell off the cliff. So I get maybe trying to fix that, but without really any offensive-minded person at all on the roster, putting Rodgers aside, like with no head coach there, no coordinator, nobody that I think I would point to and say, okay, that's the guy. I wanted an offensive guy at the top of the snake. Glenn is not that. I will say, I mean, I don't exactly know the Lions defense and what they were this year when they ended a little bit differently, and there was a lot of injuries there, and some players had some really good seasons in that defense, and you lost Hutchinson. Like it's kind of questionable what they were, but I'm not exactly sure. I mean, the history here is also my other thought. So here's the stat: there have been 8 different Jets head coaches since 2000. None have been above 500 ATS with New York. The last head coach to do it was actually Al Groh in 2000. We know about the playoff drought. I mean, the last time these guys won a playoff game, they beat Tom Brady and Peyton Manning in consecutive games. And then the curse started, which is actually kind of funny. So that is the thought process for me on Aaron Glenn. Ready to move on?
Yeah.
All right, Ben Johnson, Bears. I'll let you start with this one. I mean, obviously, he chirps the Packers in the press conference, and you say to yourself, well, I hope Eberflus and Nagy didn't do that because maybe that's a bad omen. But what's your thought on inside the division, sneaking out the back door while you're getting ready to get for the playoff game? You leave for Chicago basically. So what's your thought?
Yeah, I mean, the Lions had like 500 yards of offense. We're moving up and down the field in Washington. So I love to do the blame game and be like, oh, I don't know. Maybe these Detroit coaches would have been more focused on the game. Nah, they just played a tough Washington team. The defense was hurt. We kind of knew that's where that might be heading. Ben Johnson, to me, is Ben Johnson plus the assistants, which I'll get to in a second. That wins the coaching cycle. The Bears are the offseason champions for me. Ben Johnson was my number 1 offensive play caller for the season. And I have a whole roster matrix: quarterback, running back, receiver, offensive line, all the way down. But I also have coach, offensive coordinator, and defensive coordinator kind of based on play calling. And the way that I have it set up is everything is basically additive. Are you good at this? Okay, add that onto the score, add this onto the score. Offensive and defensive coordinator, I have as multiplicative. So the better that you are, you're not just adding on to the offense, you're making everything better. You're multiplying your quarterback. You're making Jared Goff a better version of Jared Goff, who makes the line better, who makes the receivers better. Like, everyone's like, well, he had Amon-Ra St. Brown. No, nobody knew who Amon-Ra St. Brown was before Ben Johnson made him Amon-Ra St. Brown. Now he's very talented, and he gets credit for that, Amon-Ra does. But I think Ben Johnson is an elite play caller. Every time you watch this dude in a game, watch this dude. Every time you watch his offense, there's like 2 or 3 plays where you're just like, wait, hold on, rewind immediately. I need to see that play again. This is something incredible. Sometimes a little too incredible. We've seen that a couple of times also. But, you got to take some risks. Scared money don't make money in football either. So for me, I went into my little roster matrix and said, okay, leave the Bears roster exactly as is, which won't be how this goes. They're going to add some pieces, but leave it exactly as is. And what does Ben Johnson do? And I'm going to add him in as a play caller. That immediately is going to upgrade the offensive line and especially the quarterback. Like Caleb Williams, pre-Ben Johnson and post-Ben Johnson, I think will be a crazy comparison. But that alone, adding in Ben Johnson. And then the other part, adding in his immediate hire, Dennis Allen, as the defensive coordinator. Now, look, I've been on this very podcast betting against Dennis Allen like 25 times the last 3 years as a head coach. Dennis Allen's defensive coordinator is fantastic. I just mentioned Aaron Glenn, not one of those top 5 or 7 guys. Dennis Allen, one of those top 5 or 7 guys. Dennis Allen is a set it and forget it. Ben Johnson saying, hey, look, I'm a new head coach. I'm going to call plays. I'm going to figure out this clock management and all the in-game stuff. You got the defense. I'm out. You do the thing, Dennis Allen. I don't have time for that. You do your expertise. Those 2 hires, to me, in my system, upgrade Chicago from dead last in my coaching ranks to number 7, which is massive because it moves them from 24th on offense to 13th, just the coaching change, and from 21st to 16th on defense. Overall, they jump from 24th overall to 13th in the NFL. Like, they jump into playoff range now. A different way of thinking about it. The Bears turn from the Bears into maybe the Dolphins or the Commanders. That's the sort of move that this sort of coaching change happens. So you immediately have my attention in Chicago as worst to first contender for next year. Detroit heading the wrong direction with the coaches gone. Minnesota, kind of an obvious regression candidate team. Green Bay, obviously the team they're talking smack to already. Going to have to win some games now, Chicago. But man, as a Vikings fan, not the news I was hoping for here. Ben Johnson plus Dennis Allen, elite coaching cycle hire. They win the cycle for sure.
I mean, their win total and odds and everything like that are going to see such a bump from the market because of this. I feel like the Chicago hype is going to even be like larger than it was because okay, we saw what he can do, Caleb. We saw some of the issues he had. We assume this is one of the answers to help fix those issues. So even with the expectations they had last year and the way we saw the rest of the division, which I mean, granted, yes, some of the coaches kind of switch teams, but most of the rosters there should be pretty much the same. If Minnesota, say, upgrades a quarterback, I mean, that division is going to be absurd. The one note on Ben Johnson I just thought of, and it's just weird how this happens, but this is more about just how we think of these coaches and then how we look at them once they get hired. I just thought he was so funny when you actually look at him as the head coach of the Bears and you see him having the speech downstairs in front of everyone, and you say to yourself, like, I thought of the same thing with like Steichen and Gannon. As I just look at these guys and I'm just like, oh, this is what they actually are versus like this like genius person who's just the coordinator next to the head coach. When they actually become the head coach, you kind of look at them and they're like, oh, this is just like a normal, kind of dude. But it's interesting just like looking at them from like a Chicago point of view. I mean, I believe a Chicago head coach hasn't won a playoff game in their first season since like 1950. And then you talk about Green Bay, and I know he mentioned that in the press conference, but I don't think they've gone 2-0 against them since like 2007 or 2008. And they haven't gone 1-1 ATS versus Green Bay in 2 straight seasons since 2007, 2008 as well. So, I mean, these are just different things. Just like Caleb broke a bunch of records in his first season and the Bears still didn't play well, I assume Ben Johnson's going to make them better. But again, the division, really difficult. You had mentioned Detroit's coordinators, and I think we just wanted to touch quickly on the defensive and offensive side. So from a defensive point of view, I thought Dennis Allen was actually a great option here. Obviously, he's off the board now. I think Saleh is something interesting, even though I think he's probably destined for other places. From an internal point of view, I thought Deshae Townsend, who's their defensive back coach, passing game coordinator on the defensive side, would be someone I thought was kind of interesting. First of all, defensive, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, a defensive line coach is also gone now. He's now a defensive coordinator elsewhere. Like, this feels very much to me, just big picture, this feels very Ravensy, where it's like, okay, tremendous brain drain from one year to the next. And you see this a lot. The one team that has the bye week, that's the team everyone's watching all year, that loses, doesn't just lose the game. They lose all the coaches because now they're all free to go finish all their interviews and get hired right away rather than waiting till after the Super Bowl for all this stuff. So, yeah, I don't necessarily know who the Detroit name is. Again, I wasn't the highest personally on Aaron Glenn, so I'm not going to necessarily downgrade them super a lot there. We'll kind of wait and see on that end. Ben Johnson, though, taking him off of the offense, I kind of said, what does he do for Chicago? If I do my same little matrix thing, he goes, the Lions go from my number 1 offense from the season to number 8. So still good. There's still plenty of talent there. The blocking is good. There's a lot of guys there. But first 8th is a pretty big drop off. Dropped the Lions from my top 4 tier overall, 4th place, down to 10th as a team. So again, I kind of said the Bears turn into the Commanders or the Dolphins, the Lions turn into the Bucks, and that's not a great drop off. Like, the Bucks, a fun team, a team that can drop some points on you, but a team that could maybe try to win a playoff game versus the team that's the 1 overall seed. I do want to see too, we love Dan Campbell, we love the biting the kneecaps, we love the aggression. How does the aggression work when Ben Johnson's not the one calling the plays? Because we've seen Detroit in games late this season look pretty good, calling some great 4th down plays. And like Minnesota in the Week 18, that huge game, tried to match them with their 4th down plays. No Ben Johnson. Didn't go so well. Turns out you got to make the right decision to go for it, but you got to have the right play. And you got to have Goff making the good plays. Not quite as valuable without Ben Johnson, etc. So I think I'm very much in a wait and see mode on Detroit. I would guess that as lines start to come out on futures, 2 lines I'll be looking at very early. Chicago to win the division, what's the number? Detroit to miss the playoffs, what's the number? I'm not saying I'm betting those, but these moves make me check those odds first thing when they come out.
Yeah, under win total for Detroit would be the first look to see how high I think I can get it. From an offensive point of view, the 2 names I had, Scotty Montgomery, which is their assistant head coach, running backs coach, I thought was an interesting name. I'm an Indiana guy, went to IU, so Randall L., of course, is someone I think that would be a fun name there. And then outside the realm of Detroit, if you looked externally, Ronald Curry, who's the Bills quarterback coach, obviously working with Josh, would be an interesting get. And then I put a funny little emoji next to this one, but what about Chip Kelly? Okay, I don't even want to talk about that, but we can move on. Josh McDaniels, Patriots. I don't think there's too much to say here. I kind of saw this hire with Vrabel and said to myself, oh, they're just getting the band back together. Well, that works sometimes, and then other times the records kind of suck when you get the band back together. Josh McDaniels, Patriots, thoughts?
Yeah, not a fan. Very much what I thought about the Mike Vrabel thing with the Patriots. It's just like, all right, move on. The Belichick era is over. Like, you had your run, you had your 2 decades of greatness. Brady ain't coming through that door. Belichick ain't walking through that door. Like, Vrabel and McDaniels, we have seen not be as good without certain things that they're not going to have on this team. I'm not excited to put McDaniels with Drake May. McDaniels has DVOA on years where he's not had Tom Brady. Here's the offensive DVOA for McDaniels. When he's running the offense, 20, 20, 32 dead last, 23, 1 top 10 season with Mac Jones, 15, and 27. The average DVOA is 21st. That is a near bottom 10 offense. So this is not just not a great offensive hire, it's a bad one. Like, it will be a downgrade to me from an average NFL offense, adding McDaniels in. And to me, this is just like, it's just disappointing. I would have had the Patriots ranked pretty high. We talked about it on the coaching openings. Drake May, I'm really excited about. I have him as a possible top 10 quarterback as early as next year. I get a lot less excited now that McDaniels and Vrabel are there. I think that they are floor raisers for the team, but I think that they are a poor man's Mike Tomlin type floor raiser where they can make this team somewhat competitive and competent, but I do not see a lot of ceiling raising here. So very disappointing hire for me.
I felt like the offensive coordinator position for New England with Drake May, with Mike Vrabel, knowing what Vrabel doesn't really do on the offensive side and what he can do on the defensive side, this is so disappointing. Because liking Drake May this much and then mixing him with McDaniels is so frustrating and also confusing in terms of trying to project him, because we talked about it all year on every podcast we've done. Like, they lose the game, but Drake looks good. Was said at least 55,000 times. And now you mix in McDaniels, and I think it just gets confusing because I don't like him in this offense. I don't like him in much that he's done. And then anytime he's gotten the reins on a team and been a head coach, he's been terrible. Okay, moving on. Trent Baalke, gone in Jacksonville. You can take the reins here and kind of go with it. He was there for 4 seasons, right? In total, I believe, as the head of Jacksonville.
4 seasons.
I think
too
it's
long.
4
Whatever
years.
The number was, it was too many.
Yeah.
I had in my notes weeks too late, and I crossed it off and put years too late. Whatever it is, it was too late. You missed the best coaching hires here. They had I think 4 guys come interview for the job and then back out of it. There are 32 head coaching jobs for the NFL in the entire world, only like 5 to 7 of which are available each year. And you have guys like Liam Cohen, who might never get another chance to be a head coach, who's just like, nah, I'm good. Thanks anyways, Jacksonville. Appreciate your interest. I'm out. I think Liam Cohen is a great coach. I think Liam Cohen would have been a good hire. They're losing all these opportunities. And look, they finally got the point, and they're like, all right, we got to get rid of this Baalke guy and start over. I don't know. It's too late this year. It's too late overall. I still don't hate what's there. You still have what I think can still be a potential franchise quarterback, and you have the stud rookie receiver. You get those 2 to start with. If you get the right hires here in a very bad division, a very winnable division, this could still go well. But yeah, we gotta get our jokes off at Baalke at this point, because it just was a disastrous process.
I honestly just say this is more on Khan, the owner, than it is on anything. I mean, you firing the GM after you couldn't get the coach. I mean, you just doesn't look like anyone who should be making positive football decisions in that building on any level. So I think stripping it down, even with the talented roster in a super winnable division. I mean, the division is very, very winnable from all points of view. And like you said, there's talent all over the place. Like Thomas looks absolutely absurd. I mean, he's, first round look in fantasy type deal, but that also talks about the fact that, I mean, on the field, he's catching touchdowns, he's explosive. And I think we don't really know a lot about Lawrence there, but I mean, from what we've seen, I mean, think about it. Baalke was there for 4 years. They go 10-9 and 9-8 in 2 of those years. Granted,
Yeah.
7-27 the other 2 years, but above 500. So I mean, you kind of have a little bit of a mixture, and I think that's the talent on the field. All right, let's move on here. So they have markets up right now for all sorts of things for the games. The first thing I think we wanted to talk about is the actual Super Bowl matchup. A, which matchup do you think is better from a fan point of view? And B, which matchup we want as a better? So I'll let you go first, and then I can give my quick spiel.
Yeah. So I think instinctively you think Jaden Daniels should be in the game as a fan because Jaden Daniels is the young, exciting rookie stud. I think as a fan, I want the best game, the game that I feel most uncertain about the outcome. And for me, that's Bills Eagles. That's the one where I'm like, man, I'm gonna have to really dig in before I make a call on that one. I'm not really sure which direction I go on that one. I think the line would be relatively close to even, and I just don't know where I stand on it, especially with the Jalen Hurts injury. To me, Bills Eagles is the most exciting, best game possible. As a bettor, I would root for Chiefs Commanders because the look ahead lineup right now for Chiefs Commanders is Chiefs -4.5, and I think that is insane. Give me that all day. I make it closer to a touchdown for the Chiefs. So that's the one I would want as a bettor because I would know right now who I'm on. Mahomes against the rookie. Fine, that's going to be the big story everyone will talk about. But compare the rest of the rosters, the coaching staff, the defense, everything up and down. Jane Daniels is not going to outplay Patrick Mahomes, and if he doesn't, we'll get everything else down the roster, and it's going to be pretty easy who you should be picking in that one. So as a bettor, not that interesting, but I know which side I'd be on. Bills Eagles as a bettor would be my last pick because I'm not sure where I go with it right now. I'm going to have to dig into it a little bit more. What do you like here?
I mean, the fan one is super simple. The highest total, which is Buffalo, Washington, has got to be what they're rooting for. I mean, if you want a fun indoor game between two teams that can kind of run up and down the field, the total's telling you that. I think from a fan point of view, does the AFC even really matter? Like, I think both offer compelling stories, bigger fan base, better story. Either way, I think it's a little interesting. The one stat I love here is the last 19 quarterbacks to lose their Super Bowl debut have not made it back as a starting quarterback.
Wow.
It's been like a trend. Jim Kelly was the last after losing his Super Bowl debut, so Jalen Hurts can end that drought here. But other than that, I think Philly's kind of a boring story. Like, they've already won Super Bowls. We've already seen this team. Granted, Hurts hasn't done it, but I just feel like the Washington story is much better. As a bettor, I kind of want Washington and Buffalo. I got some Washington futures, and from Buffalo, I just think it's more of a better story. Like I've seen the Kansas City story. I don't have really any financial interest on the Kansas City Buffalo side, but I think that Washington Buffalo game would be a lot of fun and a lot of different. Next here, we're going to do hypothetical lines. So there's lines out actually for the Super Bowl matchup, as we talked about with like 53.5 Buffalo, Washington. But is there any bet you like from the four matchups that we have?
Yeah, I think just the one I said. I think just Chiefs Commanders, if we get that, -4.5. That's kind of a no zone anyway. Like a line's never going to stay at -4.5 for a game, especially a game this big. And it's going to move a direction, and it's got to move the direction of the Chiefs because it's Patrick Mahomes, it's the Super Bowl, and all the money coming in. So yeah, I make that one around -7 for the Chiefs. So definitely a bet that I'm happy to get some money in on now and have them hold. And I think the Eagles are going to beat the Commanders in all likelihood. We'll get to that in a bit with the picks, but I'm happy to have them hold my money and give it back to me if I'm wrong.
I'm mostly an under guy. So I almost like the under in everyone except KC Philly, which to me at 45.5 is a little light. I think they would probably score a little more points. I projected in like the 47.5 range. But Buffalo, Washington under 53.5, Buffalo, Philly under 48.5, and KC, Washington under 49.5. To me, were all interesting looks. I think we always assume the total is going to go up. Especially like in the Super Bowl, everyone just wants the over. But I think with those, it's going to be probably an even market. I think it'll stay kind of consistent. You've seen the over-unders this week, pretty consistent. Like they haven't gone up a ton. So we'll see what happens on game day. Let's keep rolling here. So Super Bowl props. Right now, anytime touchdown, first touchdown, MVP, all that stuff is up at multiple books. So I kind of wanted to go one by one here, see if you had any value, and I'll kind of chime in on any of those markets for the Super Bowl.
Yeah, so Super Bowl MVP, I guess, is the obvious one starting out. We talked about that going into the playoffs. I had 5 long shots that I bet. 4 of those are dead because the point of the bet was to give me, here's Stafford, a little piece of the Rams. Well, that was a pretty good looking ticket. They had a drive to possibly be a home favorite in this game here. I'm happy to have had that ticket. It didn't win. I still have A.J. Brown. To me, the team that if I want to bet a Super Bowl MVP long shot right now, it's got to be Philly, because if it's the other teams, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, or Jane Daniels will be massive favorites to win MVP if their team wins the Super Bowl. And I know that creates long shot, quote, value, but is it actually valuable if the quarterback just wins at the end of the day anyway? So it's hard to bet the quarterback. You look at the numbers, they got to win MVP like 80-90% of all Super Bowl wins. That's hard to get to, even though that's basically what the number is. So now it's hard to actually talk myself into, say, Travis Kelce, who I love, who I'm betting Travis Kelce yet again this week, who has a big, well-known face and's got Taylor Swift. He's got the story. He might be a bigger star now from that perspective than Mahomes is, but still, we've never had a tight end Super Bowl MVP. He has to win at like 14% of all Chiefs wins to get there. I don't know. Everything Kelce does, Mahomes has also done, and Mahomes can do other stuff too, and he's still Patrick Mahomes. So I have a hard time getting there. I think if I want somebody, it's got to be an Eagle. And even there, now that's complicated because the Hurts injury, and where do we go with that? And what do we make of can they pass the ball anymore right now? I think probably A.J. Brown would be my best long shot still, just because he can always explode in the right matchup when he's just peppering the field. So maybe A.J. I do think I love Super Bowl MVP. I will have a full article breaking the whole thing down and all the long shots. It looks like a bit of a dud this year because I think it's just going to be one of the quarterbacks probably.
Yeah, I think the most volatile Super Bowl winner where it wouldn't be the quarterback to me is Philly. And I don't necessarily even know if I like them in this game. I know you're on them. I have Washington tickets. I just feel like Washington's a good matchup for them in that game. Now, understand these bets are all action as well at this point, so you're betting it to bet it at this point. Some anytime touchdowns I kind of liked. If I like Washington, I'm going to pick some more Washington guys, but I think Ertz is fun. 12-1 touchdown, 49-1 first touchdown. I kind of like KC in the other game, so Mahomes 9-1 and 39-1 touchdown and first touchdown in the Super Bowl. And then I'm a sucker for Noah Gray. I was probably just gonna look at first touchdown, which is like 48-1. Now he's 27-1 this week, so it's actually not a terrible bet if you like KC in terms of the odds. It's like a little close to double. And then MVP, again, I think Philly does offer the most in terms of Hurts not winning it. Like obviously Barkley is a large kind of chess piece there. But like other than them, I do think there's like a defensive option. Like I see Philly winning the Super Bowl a bunch of different ways. While I'm not sure exactly, like you said, Mahomes probably gets it and all that type of stuff. So I think Kelce 40-1, Worthy 55-1 are just interesting. Like Worthy's been getting so many looks in that offense. He's easily now the number one option with Kelce, but number one from a wide receiver point of view. Yeah. And they'll just do anything in their power to get him the ball in any way. So 55 is nice, especially if they get there. The super, super long shot, and I'll just give this right now. I kind of like Washington again. So if Washington gets there, but Eckler is like 700-1 to an MVP. I think there's a lot of weird ways they could try to get someone who has lots of experience. And you've kind of seen it in recent weeks when, the butt gets tight late in games. Like they tend to look at him from a receiving and rushing point of view. So I do see some sort of sneaky big play out of him if he gets there. So,
yeah, I think that those make sense to me. For touchdowns for me, this is not really my market, so I don't do a ton of these. I went kind of shorter here. Just to me, if you like the Chiefs, Travis Kelce anytime touchdown plus 350 makes sense. That's the bet I'm going to play any Chiefs playoff game. So I don't mind the plus 350 if I like the Chiefs to win now anyways, even though any bet is action. Kelce first touchdown, 17-1, same thing. Spoiler, we'll be on both of those when we get to the best bets shortly. If you're on the Bills, Josh Allen anytime touchdown. Same thing. I'll be on that one as well today. Whoever you like, Allen or Kelce. I realize the odds aren't quite as long, and I'm normally the long shot guy. I don't know the long shot touchdowns as well, so that's not my market, but yours make a lot of sense.
All right, let's keep rolling here. Playoff leader bets. So at this point, obviously, we've played 2-3 games. So what's the thought? Oh, what is it? 1-2 games. 1-2 games. What is your thought process with any of these markets?
Yeah, I'm a bit of a broken record here. I'm just going back to those same names I just mentioned. I like Kelce for receiving touchdowns. I like Josh
Okay.
Allen for rushing touchdowns. Allen's at 3-1. Kelce is plus 425 for receiving touchdowns. You can bet Josh Allen 5 rushing touchdowns or more is 12-1 at FanDuel. I like that one. He had 2 last game. I like him to get in there this game. Obviously, you only want to bet one of those two, Kelce or Allen, whichever one you think is going to win the game. But I think it's a good way to invest in either of those teams. Yeah, none of the other ones really stuck out to me. I tweeted out there is passing touchdowns. I believe right now Lamar Jackson and Matthew Stafford are tied for the lead, so their odds are still listed because they could end up leading. But for some reason, their odds are listed but not even. What are we doing? They're not playing anymore. You're out. Can't get more touchdowns. Why are the odds not the same? I don't know what's happening on those.
Yeah, I'm a broken record here, kind of too. I think Kelce all over the board, whether it's receiving touchdowns and yards, I think are good bets at the moment. The other ones, again, long shots from Washington's point of view. Ertz is one down. He's 13-1. I've seen even high as 15-1. And rushing touchdowns, kind of like Brian Robinson. I don't think he's going to get a ton of carries overall, but in the red zone, like getting into the end zone, I think that's a category he could. He's one back of Henry, I believe. I can double check that. But yeah, so at 9-1, I even saw some 10-1s. I thought Brian Robinson has 2. Derrick Henry leads that rushing touchdown market with 3. The other running backs with 2 are Gibbs, who's out, Barkley, that's a problem, Josh Allen, and Joe Mixon. So Allen, Barkley are one behind Henry, and so is Brian Robinson. So I thought Brian Robinson at 10-1 was an interesting bet. That's all I got there. Keep rolling.
Yeah, I think if you want a runner, the Saquon being such a heavy favorite makes that market
Yeah.
open if you don't want Saquon. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, similarly, I'm going to jump right into our next category, which is kind of the weekly specials. I only had one pick here. I'm going for the Sean Kerner Triple Crown. So you can bet the who leads this weekend in passing yards, rushing yards, receiving yards. So, again, I am betting not on Saquon here because Saquon is like minus 500 to lead in rushing yards, as he should be. He's going to rush for a lot of yards, but I'm not betting that. So I have Josh Allen for rushing yards. I will get into that. I love to bet Josh Allen rushing yards, especially against the Chiefs in playoff games. I've got A.J. Brown receiving yards. We'll talk about him. That's my favorite play on that game. And then just Mahomes, chalk on passing yards. That one is 140-1. So just a little sprinkle. None of the other weeklies caught my eye. Did you have anything here?
2 small things. AJ and McLaurin, both 30-plus receiving yards each half, I thought was intriguing. I saw, I took a sneak peek at your plays, and I've been looking at it as well most of this week. I think AJ has a shot to have a nice day here when, we've been talking about Hurts's passing yards, what it feels like forever, but I think AJ would be the target in this type of game. So 30-plus, 12-1. And then for KC Buffalo, touchdown and field goal, both teams each half, which I know is one of those weekly specials. It's 14-1. I kind of feel like the KC Buffalo game is the better option. A little stingy on the defensive side. A lot of us like the under there. So getting those touchdown and field goal, each team, each half at 14-1 felt kind of interesting. And then before we get into best bets here, we're going to do one more. We got like just an anytime touchdown dart. I was kind of looking in that like 7 to 8-1 range, just if each of us kind of like something in either game. I'll let you go first before I kind of transition us out.
Yeah, so again, not my best category here, but I mentioned his name last week, Samaje Perine. We keep betting Bills running backs receiving against the Bills, and I think he's the Chiefs' best option. So 11-1 on his probably one touch of the game if he gets it. My actual answer is kind of cheating. Travis Kelce, we did this last week. First Chiefs touchdown in a Chiefs win is 12-1. So that got me to the long number here, and I do like that bet because he's done that in 5 of the last 8 Chiefs games. So that would have been in my bets anyway. I'll sneak that in as my dart ATD here.
Yeah, if you're looking for the storyline, right, you bet Kelce first touchdown or last touchdown mixed with KC by 1-6. And the parlay is like, 30-1 or something like that. That is the storybook ending to the Super Bowl. But my anytime touchdown dart in the Washington Philly game, I looked at Crowder, who's like 8-1, and McNichols, who's 17-1 as just two options in that Washington offense. And then from KC, I really kind of like Juju. He's 10-1 ish in the market, but he outsnapped Hopkins in the wild card round. And I believe Hardman has been announced not active. So I kind of feel like Juju's the guy where he makes the catch or catches the touchdown or does something and you're like, oh yeah, like that guy who's been here and done this and kind of showed up, and one of those KC guys. So I think Juju is kind of sneaky in this game. So that was my pick. Any thought there before we keep rolling?
Yeah, I was just going to mention one other name. I didn't get the number, but I think it's maybe like 7-1. We'll call it the Gilles Gallant special. I've not had his blessing on this, but if you want to bet Dawson Knox to score a touchdown, I think that is the Gilles Gallant blessing of the pick every single week on him. I was actually looking hard at Dalton Kincaid props, and it looks like Buffalo is really kind of lowering his snap count. He just cannot block at all, and they want blockers. I think they're a running script here. So if Dawson Knox is on the field for blocking a little bit more rather than Kincaid, I think that could be a fun kind of. I think I saw 7-1 on him when I was checking out Kincaid props. So that we'll shout to Jill on that one. Hopefully it's Jill's pick. If it hits, I'll take the loss if it misses.
Well, if it's Jill's pick, if it hits, then we have to take first touchdown as well, which is 35-1.
There we go.
Dawson Knox, there you go. All right, so it is time now to get to some of these best bets for the conference championships. If you want to tail some of these bets, we have quick slip links in the podcast and video description for you. Just click those and a bet slip will open up in your sportsbook app so you can tail the bets. Super, super easy. That's what we got. So let's start with the games. Washington, the Commanders in the NFC Championship. Unbelievable. Commanders at the Eagles. Eagles 6-point favorite. Total is about 47.5. Let's just start with the game here. I have a bunch of notes and thoughts, but I want you to go first on both of these. So start with the game, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, so before I make a pick, just kind of setting up, like, what am I looking for here? The first thing has to be Jalen Hurts, because that makes this game very tricky to cap, because we just don't know and won't know, frankly, until we watch the first quarter, what Jalen Hurts are we getting. I do think we're getting Jalen Hurts. He's going to play, but kind of looking at the Twitter doctors and the folks out there that I trust as best I can to understand the injury stuff. Here's what I think we're going to get from Jalen Hurts. I think he plays, certainly. I think he can pass pretty well. I think he'll be able to run straight line pretty well. Where he's going to maybe be banged up is cutting, moving, escaping the pocket, kind of moving around a little bit. I think that leans in a decent direction for Philly, because I think he can drop and pass. He's going to have open receiver in this game. I think that they probably go a little more run heavy here, which is frankly what they should be doing anyway. It's the thing that Philadelphia does well, and it's why Saquon's line is like 1,000 yards for this Sunday, because he's going to run all game long. So I loved this spot before the Hurts injury. I have this somewhere around Eagles -8, totally opposite side of the key number, but it's a tough one because of the Hurts injury. So why did I like the spot early? Philadelphia defense, I think, has already shown it can handle the Washington offense. So if you look at the games they played this season, they dominated 7 out of 8 quarters in the season. First game, 26-10 on Thursday night until last 30 seconds garbage time touchdown, basically dominated by Philly. Then second game, 27-14 Philly into the fourth quarter, even though they didn't have Jalen Hurts for almost that entire stretch. And then Washington got hot late and won one quarter really handily and won one of the games with it. But they also turned it over 5 times. And you can say, well, what a win for Washington despite the 5 turnovers. Okay, well, Philly still forced 5 turnovers also. So you can kind of do that both ways. If you look at how the scheduling goes, both these teams have pretty soft schedules this year. So I think that's something that's going to matter a lot when we get to the next matchup in the Super Bowl, because the other side is going to be a lot more battle tested. But the Eagles are 7-2 against playoff teams, Washington 3-4. And if you look at the defense for Washington, which we know isn't good anyway, when they played a top 16 offense by DVOA, so just top half of the league, they allowed 28 points a game, 9 games, 29.5 the 2 games against the Eagles, 24 or more, all but 2. They're bottom 10 against the run. We know that's what the Eagles want to do. Saquon had over 100 yards in the first quarter last game. I love AJ Brown in this matchup as well. And I just think the script sets up very good for the Eagles if they are the Eagles. If you look at, I looked at every book. I want to bet Eagles to win through three quarters because here's why. Game one that they played, Eagles were up big after three quarters. Washington had 149 yards and 10 points. They got some garbage stuff late. They came through the back door a little bit. Game two, the Commanders have 207 yards through three quarters, only 14 points. Then they scored 22 in the fourth quarter and didn't just come through the back door. They won the game. But in the first three quarters, really the first 7 quarters against the Eagles, Washington had 24 points in 7 quarters. So I think Vic Fangio against a rookie quarterback who I know has been so good, but in this environment on the road, you have to like Fangio there. So that's kind of the setup for me. I'm obviously leaning Philly's direction. I know you're leaning more Washington's direction. What are you looking for in this one?
I mean, yeah, I mean, in terms of the game itself, I kind of do like it's getting up to 6.5 at a few places. So honestly, just waiting it out. I have a Washington futures ticket, so that I'm just throwing that out the window. Like I'm just kind of looking at this game from just handicapping the matchup. I am going to wait. I assume Philly money is going to continue rolling in, but I think there's some good props in this game that can be said more than I think both of these lines in both games are relatively right. Like maybe I would want Washington at like 4.5 or 5 if I was projecting it out. So I do think the 6 is a little high, which is why I like it. But I think Goddard props are good. I had him at 35.5 early in the week. I know Stuckey's on his, I believe, 3.5 receptions. I think it's just kind of similar to the Schultz matchup against Kansas City. I think he's going to be good in this one. That's why I like Ertz as well. So I think there's some matchups there for tight ends that I think are interesting. And AJ Brown, 57.5 was the line early in the week, now up to 60.5. I just think people think this is a good matchup for him on the outside against Washington's defense. And I think flipping it, AJ, good game this week. I think if they make the Super Bowl, I'm going to look to kind of Devontae, which is why I was considering his Super Bowl odds for MVP and things like that now. But I think he'd have a better matchup there. So in terms of just like the prop market, that I think is interesting. I also, when handicapping this game, I kept thinking to myself, Washington goes for it a lot on weird situations. Jake Elliott's having a difficulty making field goals. So I feel like key numbers may be a little odd in this one. Like we might not fall on exactly 7. Like things might happen in this game to kind of throw that off a little bit, which is why I kind of want to wait and get some of those numbers later in the week, like the 6.5. And, hopefully it gets up to 7 for what I'm looking for. From just a stat point of view, I think the fact that the Commanders haven't played a home game in is like almost a month and a half at this point. I believe this is like their fourth or fifth consecutive road game. And looking it up, 8th team since 2000, enter a playoff game on a 4th game or later of a road trip, 0-7 straight up those teams. So it's just very, very difficult to go through what they've gone through. And I think a lot of it's adrenaline. You've got a rookie quarterback who's taking a lot of pressure and running it around a lot. I think that has to do with it. So the one more stat before I give it back to you and we can go to the next game, or you can keep going on what you're thinking here. Eagles blowing leads, just not something. I think it's a discussion we've had in the past that just hasn't happened. And I've said this stat on previous shows, but I think it holds for this one, which is a little worrisome on my side if I like Washington. But under Sirianni, Philly 16-0 straight up as a home favorite when they get a lead of 7+ points. When facing a team above 500, I think there's something like 20-2 or something like that overall. But really good opponent, get a lead, home favorite. They usually cruise, and a lot of that has to do with Saquon. But it to me, I think it's what you're looking for in this game: get early lead through 3 quarters, and kind of sail from there. So.
Yeah, so I am on Eagles in this game, but I'll just say I'm light on Eagles here. I'd rather play props. We'll get to the 2 props I like in a second, but I do think that I like Philadelphia a little less now than I thought I would a week ago as I dug into this more. One thing that I looked at today that I expected to go the other way, I wondered, okay, what about the team that upsets the 1 seed in the division round? So you upset the team off the bye week, you get the huge win. There's got to be a huge adrenaline letdown after that, right? Like that team has got to be toast the week after. That's what I thought. So I look back in our bet labs since 2003, we have 13 times where the 1 seed lost last round, divisional round. What happens after that? The team, like the Commanders, that the upsetting team, 6-7 straight up in the next game, where I have to assume you're the underdog again. 5 of the 6 winners went on to win the Super Bowl. So sometimes when you're hot, and you just keep on going. I don't love that for Philly. Here's another one. We mentioned the stat on Sunday Night Recap. Favorites in conference championship division rematches. That's this right now. 4-0 straight up, but by 6.3 points a game. Well, the line is 6.5, so that's not a lot of advantage there. They're 3-1 ATS. The one miss was only by half a point. So again, that helps Philadelphia, but these are close games. Like I think that this is going to end up very close to where we're at here. Jane Daniels, of course, the 6th rookie quarterback to start a conference championship game. None of them have reached the Super Bowl. So you can do some of those numbers, I think, on both sides. The other one with Washington's offense here, where ultimately I am trusting Philadelphia's defense, I think, more than anything else as I pick the Eagles. Washington's offense did not really get tested a lot this year by top defenses. They're 1-4 this season straight up when they face a top 12 defense, and they averaged just under 300 yards a game. They averaged almost 400 yards a game in all their other games. So granted, that's what's supposed to happen. That's why you're a top defense. But if you look just kind of, again, the through the 3 quarters part, Washington was 14 points or less in all but one of those games through 3 quarters, and then kind of found some stuff late. So maybe that sets up for the Eagles not to be the right pick, and the back door is open. This line, I probably wouldn't take it really past the 6. I think, frankly, given everything I've looked at, this is crazy because I'm picking the Eagles -6 here light, but I think Washington money line might actually have the best value of any of the kind of standard picks here, just because, like you said, similar to last week, they're volatile. If they can be in the mix, division closes the gap a little bit, all those 4th down tries closes the gap. It does. I don't think the Eagles absolutely dominate and roll this team. That's what I thought I would think a week ago, but given the Hurts injury and given some of the stuff I looked at about the teams getting the big upset and moving on, Washington probably is live here. That makes them dangerous. So I'm going to play one Washington prop. I like Terry McLaurin to find the end zone again. It's plus 140. Eagles defense has shut down running backs this year. I think it's got to be all passing. So it's got to be Jane Daniels, but if he's passing, it's going to be to Terry McLaurin. Eagles have been top 10 by bottom 10 by DVOA against wide receiver ones this season. Now, look, McLaurin had one game against the Eagles where he had one catch for 10 yards. And they got a lot of hype on Quenyon Mitchell, who's banged up, probably plays in this one, but we'll see how that goes. But if you look at just kind of what I call a true wide receiver one, judgment call, but if I looked at the Eagles schedule, when did you face a go-to wide receiver one? 14 times they did that. 7 of those guys, half of them, got a touchdown. So I think that this line should be closer to plus 100 because McLaurin, last 8 games, has been a touchdown machine. He has 9 touchdowns in the last 8 games, at least 1 in 7 out of the 8. So regression to the mean, I don't know. That regression doesn't happen overnight. I think he's just going to keep on scoring. I'm not sure Washington scores a ton, but he to me is the guy that I think does score if they get somebody. So McLaurin, anytime touchdown, plus 140. We've got the quick slip for that one. I'm on A.J. Brown too. That's my favorite angle here. But before I get to A.J. Brown, any thoughts on McLaurin here?
I think it's the right call because I think at this point it's a little difficult to try to differentiate between the Dynami Browns and the Almeida Zacchaeuses, and like they've gotten more options, even with like Crowder as we've gone on, as we brought in Dynami Brown into the offense. So I just think picking the number one in this spot is probably the safest bet. I think the other odds have kind of been slashed a little bit, and this one to me, I think you're right. I think it should be a little shorter.
Yeah. I think so too. I immediately as I looked at this one, I thought, okay, I'm on both wide receiver ones. So that's my McLaurin play. But my favorite way to attack this game, despite what we've watched in the postseason so far, is get your nose out of the book and bet some A.J. Brown receiving escalators. So here's the case, and we'll get to a few bets I'm playing on A.J. Brown. Washington, also bottom 10 DVOA against wide receiver one. Even after they traded for Lattimore, it's still been pretty ugly. Again, 14 games for them against what I call a true wide receiver one. Here are some of the games that they've allowed this year. Malik Neighbors, 10 catches, 127 yards on 18 targets. That is a lot of targets. Jamar Chase, 6 for 118 and 2 scores. Amon-Ra St. Brown last week, 8 catches, 137 yards. A.J. Brown, guess who? 15 targets, his season high, 8 catches, 97 yards. So if you look at those 14 wide receiver ones, they averaged 7 catches on 10 targets against the Commanders for 90 yards, scored a touchdown in 9 out of 14 games. every single one of them got at least 6 targets. Half of them had at least 10 targets. So for whatever reason, whether it's just the defense or the way things are getting played, teams are peppering their top target. Over half of the guys had at least 7 catches. All but one had at least 5 catch. All but one had at least 59 yards. Over half had 90 yards. I think the big reason here is the style of play that Washington is. They top 7 in man coverage, highest of any team left in the playoffs. They're top 7 in single high. Well, A.J. Brown, number 1 PFF grade against man coverage, number 2 yards per route run against single high. So it's time to unleash our inner excellence. A.J. Brown overs, 15 targets last time for him against Washington. That was his high on the season. And don't forget, that was the game when Hurts was out. So a little bit script proof here. If Hurts is a little bit limited, if we get some Pickett or Tanner McKee or whatever else, I think they lean on him even more. So I look at A.J. Brown. What are my numbers for him? I'm putting him at like 8 to 12 targets, 6 to 8 catches, 70 to 115 yards. That's kind of my range for him. I think minimum 5 catches, 60 yards. So I looked at the receptions first, over 4.5. That's the line, about even odds. I don't mind that. That looks pretty good to me. He's over in 10 of 15. But if he gets over that for 5 catches, I'd rather just play the yards. So I'm going to play the line you mentioned, over 60.5 yards, minus 110. If he gets those 5 catches, he's 5 catches this season. He's gone 10 for 10 with 65 yards in those games. So I'd rather just play that one anyway, because of course I could get like 2 catches and one of them is a long one with the way A.J. Brown plays. So we hit that one. So that's the standard play. 90 plus yards. I mentioned true receiver ones have gone over that half of the time against the Washington. So 90 plus for A.J. Brown is 3-1. He's had 89 yards or more, 7 out of 15 games, almost half of his games this season. So more boom or bust, and he has busted real hard the first 2 games, but this is a different matchup. So I like the yards there. You can get both of those A.J. Brown yardage plays in the quick slip. And then just a couple further escalators on him. Receptions, again, not playing that. I'd rather have the yards, but 8 receptions is plus 850. So just a touch there. Washington's allowed that 6 times to wide receiver 1. If you want the touchdown, I do think plus 160 is too long. I don't necessarily love a lot of points in this game. And we got the tush push and all that. So I'm going to stay away from the touchdown, but the numbers check out there as well. I think if you like AJ, I'd rather do the futures on him because I like the Eagles to win. I like AJ to have a big game. I like the matchup next week also, or in the Super Bowl for him. So you can bet 200 yards or more in the playoffs at plus 450. 250 yards or more is plus 1,300. Now, only has 14 yards in 2 games. So I'm basically starting from scratch. But if we're right that we get 90 here, then we're halfway to that first hit and get another big game in the Super Bowl, and it kind of sets up nicely for us. So main bets again, A.J. Brown, over 60.5 receiving yards, 90 plus as well. And then you can check out some of those escalators. But I do think this is finally the game for him to have a big one in the playoffs.
Yeah, you had mentioned it. Against number 1 wide receivers, Washington, 8.1 pass attempts to number 1s, almost 75 receiving yards. And then you look at what AJ's done against Washington. I mean, he has 8 targets in 4 straight meetings against them. So obviously he is part of the game plan. So I like that look. You want to go to the next one? You ready?
Let's do it.
All right, Buffalo at Kansas City. So the line as we're doing this is still sitting at 1.5 for Kansas City. It actually feels like it's kind of making its way to 2 in some places because it's minus 1.5, minus 115. And I've seen even 116s and 17. So something to watch out for there. The total is also 47.5 in this game. It came down a little bit. I saw some 48s early in the week, but both games sitting at 47.5. So again, I'll kind of let you set it all up here, but Buffalo, Kansas City for the 4th time in the playoffs, I believe. So what do you got here?
Man, I love this game. So I'm on the Chiefs here. We had Chiefs on the hot read. I'm going to reiterate the pick on the Chiefs, but I have a lot of angles on this game. So start with just the Chiefs angle. Mahomes versus Allen, to me, the clear top 2 quarterbacks in football, for me, in a tier of their own. And I think if we're being honest, Josh Allen has outplayed Patrick Mahomes pretty clearly this year. I think if we're also being honest, these are not the best versions of either of these teams that we've gotten into this matchup here. Chiefs defense has been up and down this season. Neither team has been that explosive offensively with their receivers aren't as strong. Bills defense has been up and down and kind of trending downward. But I think if I look at the defenses, that to me is where I make the case here for Kansas City. Chiefs, before that week 18 snoozer, Chiefs had been top 5 offense and defense the last 4 weeks. They finally got back groove defensively. They got Jalen Warren back now as well. The pass defense is really good. The run defense, I do think Buffalo can run on them a little bit. If I'm wrong on this game, I think that will probably be a big reason why. But on the other side, Bills defense to me is what I think is the weakest link on the field. They tailed off to bottom 10. Sorry, they tailed off to fringe top 10 run and pass last 6 weeks. We saw in the playoff games so far, we saw Denver move the ball with some success. We saw Baltimore last week do anything they want in the second half until the guys just dropped the ball. Otherwise, Buffalo didn't really stop them there. I think Kansas City can actually run on them a little bit. Bills are a little bit weak up the middle. We saw that play out against Baltimore. And most importantly, Buffalo, by design, is not good defending short passes and not good defending middle of the field. And annoyingly to me and football fans everywhere, that's Patrick Mahomes' football now. He has the second most short passes in the league. Chiefs are the number 3 success rate offense between the hashes from SIS. The Bills defense ranks 31st there. So all that stuff right over the middle of the field, all those quick, easy completions, that to me is kind of the Chiefs' run game. And I think that they are going to keep the chains moving. That, like, you're going to hear a lot of, if you like Buffalo, run the ball, keep Mahomes off the field. I think actually the Chiefs might be kind of the underdog here, and they're going to pass over the middle, 5-yard passes all game, and keep Josh Allen off the field. I think actually that's kind of the direction that we might be headed here. And I just overall like the Chiefs better. I like their receivers a little bit better. I like their blocking better. I certainly like their defense better. Their special teams way more. Coaching way more. Bills also have been awesome at home all season, so I think playing on the road here is a real loss for them. So Chiefs -1.5, that is the pick. You can get that in the quick slip. I've got better ways I like to play this one, but conference championship, 1 seed is 20-5 as favorites straight up since 2003. Perfect 8-0 when they're 11% win percent rate or better like the Chiefs are. And then the stat we always know, Patrick Mahomes, 3-point favorite or anything less than that, including as an underdog, 27-9-1 ATS for his career, 75%, including, from your article, 7-0, perfect, straight up, and ATS in the playoffs. Mahomes versus Allen, 4-4. Mahomes versus Allen in the playoffs, 3-0. The Chiefs are inevitable. Chiefs -1.5. We'll get to other angles I like on this. I got a lot coming, but where do you land on Chiefs Bills?
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I think Kansas City's a more complete team, while the other side is Josh Allen dependent. I think Josh Allen can be a superhero, and I think there's ways to play him being a superhero, but I think KC is just more well-rounded. I think KC will win the time of possession. I think they'll run the ball. I think Buffalo's defense, when you said that they're the weakest link on the field, I couldn't agree more. I really think turnovers is something that, I mean, we say that in every playoff game. We say that in most games anyway, but especially in this one. So Buffalo, 21 straight games, not losing the turnover battle. Kansas City,
Wow.
8 straight games without a turnover. So that Kansas City streak, longest in the Super Bowl era for any team. Last game with a turnover for Kansas City against Buffalo. So I honestly, in this situation, I think turnovers, especially early turnovers, will completely turn the tables here. I think the turnovers. Now, the thing about Josh Allen this year, which I think has completely changed how he plays quarterback, is I believe he has the lowest turnover-worthy rate of any quarterback. Now, that's fumbles, that's interceptions. I mean, he has just really made it a mission of his to control the ball, hold the ball, and he's running more than ever. I mean, I just think he's kind of said at this point, which Lamar might get to at some point in his career, like, if I don't do it myself and I don't, make the play myself, find the right guy myself, we're just not going to win these games, even if there's 13 seconds left. So I think at this point in his career entering this game and what we've seen this season, he just isn't going to allow it to happen. But if it does happen, which I kind of think it will in this game, because I think Kansas City is going to give him schemes. I think they're going to blitz him at certain times. I think they're going to pressure him. I think they're going to make it a little more difficult. I think the turnover is going to be a key in this one. So, and the stats that I pulled up here, so pressure stats, last 5 games versus the Bills. Now, this is Patrick Mahomes. 6 touchdowns, 0 picks in a clean pocket. 5 touchdowns, 5 interceptions under pressure. He's also 4 touchdowns and no picks in play action and the screen game. So when he is in a clean pocket or using play action in the screen game, last 5 games versus the Bills, he has 10 touchdowns and no interceptions. So I think if Buffalo isn't able to get in his face, make him do things that make him feel uncomfortable, I think it's going to be very difficult. I think Kansas City should probably be a 2 or 3 point favorite in this one. So just from a value point of view, I think you're right.
Yeah, I was surprised. My model actually has the Chiefs as above the key number. I have it like 4 or 5 points, which is a little crazy. I can't get there to
Wow.
match my model just with the Mahomes Allen matchup. But here are some other plays I like to, some other ways I like to bet the Chiefs in this game. Now, I had an article up from early in the week. Just bet Super Bowl futures for Chiefs. It's not that sexy or exciting because it's, yeah, okay, it's the Chiefs, we know. But plus 240, I think, is a bad number for them. You can check out the article there. I think with this particular game, you pretty much know it's going to go back and forth. In fact, the Bills have played 8 times against Patrick Mahomes. They've led at some point in all 8 games so far. In fact, the Chiefs led in 7 of those games at some point. So both teams have led the game in 7 out of 8 matchups. You can bet on the Chiefs to win from behind at plus 195. I love that. That is my favorite way to bet the Chiefs in this game, just as the game alone, because I think we're going to go back and forth here. And I think that's basically just getting a much, much better price on a money line pick of the Chiefs in a game that they're probably going to trail and they have some scores back and forth on. Frankly, if you like Buffalo, plus 215 for that same bet, I think is fine also. Heck, you could play both of them at about minus 200. That's hit 7 out of 8 matchups. I don't mind that. I do think because of the back and forth, one bet I always love to play in this game, both teams to score in the fourth quarter. Both teams to score in the fourth quarter, all but 1 of 8 matchups here. So 7 out of 8, 88% hit rate. You're going to pay the juice, minus 200. But look, you know, if I'm recommending a minus 200 juice bet, you know it's a pretty good bet to play. So I like that one. Both teams to score in the fourth quarter. And then this year when they played, we had a 9-point game, but it was a 2-point game with 2 minutes left. And then Josh Allen had that, what I thought should have been the MVP run into the end zone. They busted the play there. But I like the under 7-point close game play on this one. Before this year, the last 4 games, 6 points in overtime, 4 points, 3 points, and 3 points. So 4 straight games under a touchdown. So you can probably build this one yourself with the same game parlay. Bills plus 6.5, Chiefs plus 6.5. So neither team to win by 7 or more, either team to win by 6 or less, basically. Plus 118. That has been another go-to play for me on this particular game, where we just keep getting classics and both these quarterbacks are too good to get buried and they're going to keep scoring late. So I think those are fun ways to attack the game. I've got some props as well, but what do you think about those game attacks?
Yeah, the Chiefs Super Bowl price to me is the one that stands out the most because of, I mean, they're going to be favored over Philly. And if it's Washington, I think that line's going to get to 5 or 6 would be my guess, just based off of the 2 weeks. So I feel like the 240 price was something that I had been talking to a few people earlier, trying to come up with different plays for certain things. And to me, that one stood out if we were trying to make any Super Bowl play. Obviously, if you like Washington, probably should have done that a round or 2 ago, but I think it's like 7-1 or so. But that Super Bowl price for KC stands out. And then I said it earlier when I was joking about the narrative play with Kelce, like last touchdown, first touchdown. KC by 1-6, to me, stands out a lot. I mean, there's lots of ways for that to hit, and that extends the money line as well. So we are on the same page there.
Yeah, I mean, KC by 1-6 is effectively that same bet, just removing the Buffalo side. So I think for me, I've got enough KC ways covered the other way, but I certainly like that angle as well if you just want to bet the Chiefs. My favorite prop here is one that I go to on almost every Bills playoff game, and I think probably on every Bills Chiefs game. Give me the Josh Allen rushing escalator. So if you've listened to me in the past, you already have this one marked down. Hopefully you already bet it because the line has started to move up a little bit. Consistently, Josh Allen has his best games as a runner in the biggest games. And that is not just like a made up thing. His stats are higher. He has more attempts. He has more yards when he plays above 500 teams, when he plays in the playoffs. That is a Bills strategy. They're saving him for the biggest games. You can't just run 15 times every game. You're going to run into the dust that way. So that's a stat that we've seen time and time again against the Chiefs. 8 games, 10.3 carries a game, 56 yards rushing. In fact, of those 8 games, his 3 best rushing all came in the 3 playoff games, averaged 76 yards a game in those three, 68 plus, all three of them. Now, this season was one of his lower rushing yard seasons, only 6.5 carries a game, but in the playoffs, he's up to 9 carries a game already. So we're seeing that go up. Chiefs are top 5 most rushes and most rushing yards allowed to quarterbacks. We saw CJ Stroud find some success scrambling last week. So I think we get some Allen design runs and some scrambles as well. I think we get 8 to 12 rushes at least. I can't bet attempts this time. We played that last time and hit it for an escalator. The line's 9.5, but the books are telling us he's going to run it 10 times. So if he does, I think we should get something like 40 to 70 yards at least. So I'm going to play basically both of those. The standard line is over 47.5 yards. I'll play that one. And then 70 plus yards is plus 320. Again, if you want to fade Saquon, most rushing yards on the weekend, 16 to 1 could be a fun way to bet on Josh Allen to just have a big game that way. And then, of course, I got to have the touchdown, because if Josh Allen's running, he's probably going to have a touchdown. When he has at least 8 rushing attempts, he's done that 16 times since the start of last season. He has a touchdown in 14 of those 16 games. So if he's out there running 8 times or more, he's pretty much always getting to the end zone, 22 touchdowns in those games. So we're still getting it at even odds, plus 100 for a Josh anytime touchdown, taking that one all day. Multiple touchdowns in 7 of those 16 games with at least 8 rushing attempts, including 2 of 4 in the playoffs. So that's like close to 50-50. 2 touchdowns is plus 700. So you know I got to play that one. That one just hit last week as well. YOLO bets, 3 touchdowns is 45 to 1. 5 rushing touchdowns in the playoffs is 12 to 1. If you think Buffalo wins here, you have to love that bet, because he's got 2 already. He probably gets 1 or 2 here as well. Could get all 3 and hit it. Josh Allen, all the rushing, over 47.5 yards, 70 plus at plus 320 as well. And the anytime touchdown, plus 100, 2 touchdowns, plus 700. All of that is in your quick slip. Josh Allen rushing, it's an auto play for me every single time in this matchup.
Yeah, the one note I'll say there, last week against Baltimore, he had 6 red zone rush attempts. That is a lot, even considering all circumstances. So his last game against Kansas City, he actually didn't have a rush red zone attempt. But before that, it's 3-3-2, 3 games before. So I do have to feel like they're saving him for this moment. And I think, I was trying to compare him to Cook. And Cook had 3 rush red zone attempts in that last Kansas City game. But that was just a different circumstance. I have to believe after he got 6 last week against Baltimore, you're going to see something kind of similar. So that's my feeling on the Josh Allen stuff. But keep rolling along. I know you got a bunch here.
Yeah, Josh Allen too. We've seen late 2 seasons in a row where his rushing touchdowns go up, where it's like, you know what, let me just do this myself, guys. It's Cook early in the year, it's Allen late in the year. So I think that fades into that trend a little bit as well. So we always play Josh Allen rushing in this game. We always play Travis Kelce. We hit the Travis Kelce legacy escalator last week, so let's run it back. Kelce against the Bills, Kelce in the playoffs. You know I got to play that. So 19 playoff games now with Patrick Mahomes. Travis Kelce has 19 touchdowns in 19 games. Absurd numbers. At least 1 score in 14 out of 19. That's a 74% hit rate for an anytime touchdown. He had one last week. He almost had a second. If he could just run like he was not 100 years old anymore, he would have the second one also. Those numbers would say anytime touchdown more like minus 300. We get plus 135 still. That's a criminal number. It's not high as it was last week, but I'm definitely betting that. Plus 135. Then we mentioned already, first Chiefs touchdown. That's a thing that did not hit last week, but almost did. He got the second touchdown. Some books, you still get your money back if you bet it that way. First Chiefs touchdown, plus 425. First Chiefs touchdown in a win, plus 1,200. So same bets as last week, just running it back again on those. I also like a lot, we mentioned as far as playoff leaders, Kelce has an option there. I actually think maybe the better way is you can bet at FanDuel 3 touchdowns in the playoffs at plus 390, 3 or more. I think that's actually a better way to bet a Kelce escalator, because you're betting 2 touchdowns in this game is around plus 400. So that's the same price. He already has 1. I can either get 2 in this game or 1 now and 1 in the Super Bowl. He's plus 425 to get the most receiving touchdowns. I'm probably going to need at least 3 to do that anyways, or else I'm splitting and losing my money anyhow. So I think that's a good bet on the touchdowns. And then as far as the yardage, looking back again, last 5 playoffs, counting this one now, 120 catches, 1,388 yards. The average for Kelce over that stretch, these numbers are just crazy. 8.5 catches, 99 yards a game over like a season of playoff games. 71 plus yards in 14 straight playoff games for a tight end is absurd. In 8 games with Mahomes against the Bills, 6.5 catches, 76 yards, but in the playoffs alone, 8.7 catches, 96 yards. Basically just his usual playoff output. That's what he does. Now look, they played this season. I played Kelce props because I always play Kelce props against the Bills. They all lost. He caught 2 balls for 8 yards. Noah Gray caught 2 touchdowns for some reason. Noah Gray, get out of here. Maybe get 1 touchdown for Evans bet, but then we're going to hit our Kelce bets. I think this is the playoffs. This is a little bit different now. You're going to get the ball to Kelce, and the Bills have been pretty bad against tight ends. Remember, bad short passes, bad against middle passes, so you want Kelce. Andrews and Likely didn't end well for them last week, but they had 9 catches for 134 yards and a touchdown and almost a 2-point conversion that they should have had. They torched them. That was the story of the game. Those tight ends, last 6 weeks, Bills against tight ends have allowed 74 yards a game. Again, that's basically the Kelce average here. So Mahomes with Kelce against the Bills, 75 plus yards to Kelce in 5 out of the 8 games, including all 3 playoff games. So I got up at the yards too. We bet this at open, 65.5, still 67.5. I like that. Kelce over on the yards. And then we'll take the escalator to 90 plus this week at plus 230. So Kelce over on the yards, 90 plus yards for escalator. Give me the anytime touchdown plus 135. Give me some of those touchdown escalators. Again, it's all in the quick slip there for you. Travis Kelce legacy one more time, and then another time again after that once they win.
6 red zone targets for Kelce in the last 2 games. I think they're starting to look for him more. I kind of like the last touchdown angle, and if he doesn't have, and that's 8-1, if he doesn't have a touchdown at halftime, it's going to be hard for me not to bet like Kelce anytime touchdown at the half, and then I might even sprinkle it with the under second half. KC just runs the game out of the, nobody scores. They do it. They're 29-10 second half unders last 39 games. They're just, they make these games, they run the ball, they make these games end quickly. So I think that's interesting. Also, if you want to mess around here, Kelce first touchdown, Kelce last touchdown. And if you add 2 touchdowns to it, it actually goes up for some reason, but it's 90-1. So, I mean, I at least feel like I have to have something there. But I agree with you. Yeah. I think Kelce is in for a good one here.
I mean, I suppose first touchdown, last touchdown could be, in fact, the same touchdown if they only scored 1. So I guess that's why the odds have to go up a little bit. But I think that's a fun narrative one as well. All right, last one, a little bit simpler here. I mentioned earlier I looked at Dalton Kincaid. I looked at Xavier Worthy. We bet him on the hot read over 4.5 receptions. Still like that one, but juice pretty high now. I'm going to go for kind of Buffalo's version of that. Give me Khalil Shakir over 5.5 receptions. It's plus 135 on that one. To me, I don't necessarily know who to trust on Buffalo as far as a receiver, except I do trust this guy, Khalil Shakir. He's become the security blanket. He's the go-to guy on third downs. He's got such good hands. He has at least 6 catches and at least 61 yards, both playoff games. Against the Chiefs earlier this season, he had a season-high 12 targets, caught 8 balls for 70 yards. Last year in the playoffs, he also had a good game against the Chiefs, 7 catches, 44 yards, and 9 targets. So not a ton of yards here, but just those quick third down, move the chain type throws. This to me is the guy Josh is looking for. And remember last year, they had Diggs in that game too. And Shakir actually led the team in receptions. Chiefs have been vulnerable this season to wide receiver 1 and vulnerable especially to these kind of like small, crisp route runner type guys. I looked at their list, and again, judgment call here, but I looked at who are guys kind of like this, like a Jacoby Myers, for example, and Tank Dell for Houston had a big game against them. I counted 7 guys like that, and they averaged 10 targets against the Chiefs, 7 catches, 76 yards. Every one of them had at least 6 catches and at least 7 targets. So I want volume here, not necessarily yards, not necessarily touchdowns. I just want to feed the receptions monster. So over 5.5 receptions for Khalil Shakir, plus 135. Check the books. Look around here because some books have this at 4.5 receptions, heavy on the juice. I don't really need that. I just want to go straight to the better juice one at over 5.5. And then I do like 7 plus catches at plus 260. He's done that in 4 of his last 16 games, but that's 2 games against the Chiefs where he hit it. That's 2 of the 4 there. So I like the 7 plus catches there. And if you want to take the escalator a little further, 8 catches is 475, 10 catches is 15-1. Just a little nibble on those. I don't think he's going to have that huge of a game necessarily, but yeah, I'm looking at how do I invest in these quarterbacks here. I want Josh running, and I want him passing the ball off to Khalil Shakir. I think that's the one guy in Buffalo that I do trust a lot in this game.
So do they. 6+ targets in 12 consecutive games for Khalil Shakir. So, I mean, he is getting the ball no matter what. And you had mentioned it. I mean, he had 12 targets in the last game, but he has 21 targets in the last 2 meetings against Buffalo. So, I mean, against Kansas City. So, definitely being looked at there. And I feel like if we're right and they're trailing, I mean, he's going to get a lot of looks up the middle. So, we will see how that goes. You have anything else here?
Yeah, I mean, either way, both teams are going to be trailing, and both teams are probably going to have like a 2-minute drive at some point. I
Yeah.
love Shakir and Kelce getting all those short passes, 5 yards, 7 yards, move the chains, move the clock. Like, that's part of why I like these scripts here, because I think both teams could be trailing, both teams looking to kind of speed things up. And this is the way that they speed up, is it's that Julian Edelman Super Bowl MVP sort of thing. It's just move the ball, give me those 8-yard outs, move the chains sort of thing. That's why I like both of them. This is probably the game that I bet the most things on every year when we get it in the playoff or in the regular season. And now I've got Allen a whole list of bets, Kelce a whole list of bets. I had the Worthy, I'm on Shakir. I got all the both teams to score in the fourth quarter and the come from behind win. Like I'm going to end up with like 25 bets in the app on this one game alone somehow. But I cannot wait. This is the game of the year to me. Chiefs, Bills, Allen, Mahomes. You can't get any better than this with football.
Yeah, I mean, you said it perfectly. It almost feels like we've gotten a second and even third Super Bowl with the Buffalo-Baltimore game last week. So I feel like we are treating it that way. We've got like a Propapalooza here. I mean, we've really gone the extra length, but that is it. That is the Best Bets podcast, Action Network Conference Championship episode. Download the free award-winning Action Network app to see more from all of our Action Network contributors. Plus, you can track your own picks. Also, make sure to check out the Action Network Discord server. Chop it up with experts. I'm in there. A bunch of people are just talking during games. Lots of fun. There's a link to join in the description of the podcast. Plus, if you want to tell any of the bets we gave out, which is like at least 100 during this episode, make sure to look for the quick slip link in the podcast and video description. We will be back, me and Brandon, Sunday night to recap both games and look towards the Super Bowl. We'll talk about the line. We'll talk about some props, which I am sure will be out in 2025, at least minutes after the matchup is set. And good luck with all your bets this weekend. And 3 football games left. Can't believe it. Enjoy, everybody.